If ever there was a case that reveals the shocking moral bankruptcy and the appalling complacency of the United States Embassy in La République du Cameroon, Yaoundé, it is the case of Augustine Fauler, whose face you find there. What happened to this U.S. citizen should outrage not only every Cameroonian, Amazonian, but every single American who still believes that the stars and stripes mean protection at home or abroad. Late in 2024, Augustine, a Washington, D.C. resident, traveled to Cameroon for a brief vacation. He entered the country without an incident. But what followed is a horror story that belongs in the darkest chapters of modern diplomacy. On the eve of his scheduled return to the United States, security officers of the Cameroonian regime stormed his hotel room at Hotel du Rai in Bonaberi, Douala. Without a warrant, without explanation, without mercy, he was handcuffed like a criminal, whisked away to the Douala airport under the cover of the night, and subjected to a grueling interrogation. Then nothing. He vanished. From that moment, the silence from Cameroonian authorities was deafening. But far worse and infinitely more disgraceful was the silence and inaction from the American embassy in Yaoundé. For months, 4 excruciating months, his family knocked on the doors of that embassy. They made calls, sent messages, and begged for answers. What did they get? Excuses, lies. We don't know where he is, the family was told by the embassy. But how does a man disappear in a country where the U.S. has one of its largest embassies in sub-Saharan Africa? The answer is simple. When those tasked with protecting Americans choose not to. That's as simple as that. Let's be clear. The embassy didn't fail to locate Augustine Najwa. It refused to. It chose to rely solely on what Cameroonian officials told them, as though the same regime notorious for torture, arbitrary detentions, and extrajudicial killings could be trusted as a reliable source. At no point did the embassy conduct an independent investigation. At no point did it demand access to suspected detention centers in Cameroon. At no point did it raise hell to protect an American citizen. Instead, it sat back and watched Augustine be swallowed alive by a system that brutalizes without blinking. And now, after 4 months of unimaginable pain, Augustine Fauler has finally resurfaced, not in safety, not in freedom, but in Kondengui, Cameroon's most notorious prison, a hellhole by every definition. He emerged looking like a ghost of himself, emaciated, deteriorating, going blind, begging for help. Where is the outrage from the embassy now? Where is the action? Now that they can no longer pretend they don't know where he is. Will they, the U.S. embassy, fight for him? Or will they continue to sit on their hands while a U.S. citizen is left to rot in a dungeon? This is not just a failure of protocol, it is a betrayal of the highest order. In past years, U.S. diplomats in Yaoundé posted to Cameroon never allowed this kind of abuse to happen under their watch. They stood firm. They confronted injustice. They made it known that the United States does not abandon its own. But under the current leadership in Yaoundé, The U.S. Embassy has been reduced to a rubber stamp of Cameroonian impunity, a silent observer of human suffering. If American citizens can no longer travel to Cameroon without fear of being kidnapped by Cameroon security forces, then who can? If the U.S. Embassy in Yaoundé cannot locate or advocate for rescue a detained American, then what is its purpose? If we have diplomats who are too timid to confront dictators, too detached to respond to crisis, and too blind to see abuse when it stares them in the face, then maybe, just maybe, that embassy should be shut down. We don't need diplomats who smile at press briefings while American citizens scream in chains behind prison walls. We don't need ambassadors who toast with tyrants while mothers cry for their disappeared sons. We need a U.S. embassy in Yaoundé, Cameroon that acts boldly, swiftly, and relentlessly on behalf of its people. Augustine Fauler is not a case number. He is not an inconvenience. He is an American. And if that means anything at all, then it's time for the embassy in Yaoundé to redeem its soul and bring him home to the USA, to Washington, D.C., that is known to be his official residence.